Simplifying, multiplying, and dividing rational expressions. Now remember, rational expressions are expressions that are like fractions, right? And we're also going to make sure that even though this one says simplify, we're always going to simplify at the end of our problems. So after today, you should be able to simplify, multiply, and divide rational expressions. Okay, rational expression is in simplest form when the numerator and denominator of a polynomial have no common divisors, okay? To simplify, we would factor the numerator and the denominator, and we would make ones. In other words, like if I have x plus 3 on the top and I have x plus 3 on the bottom, that's a 1. Just like if I had 5 over 5, that would make 1, okay? So we're always going to factor. So we're going to go to the top. Like I said, factoring never goes away. So we factor the top and we do greatest common factor. So 3 times x minus 1. And we factor the bottom. So x times x minus 1. And we see that they both have an x minus 1 in common. And so we have a 3 on the top and an x on the bottom, and we're finished. Now remember, you cannot take out things unless they're like let me give you an example. If I have like x squared plus 3x plus 5, 5, and I have an x on the bottom, I cannot do this. I can't go like this and take this x and take that x, because this is part of a sum, right? So if anything's part of a sum or a difference, you need to take it from all three terms. So you can see how in this situation, we couldn't have taken an x out because it wasn't in all three terms. Okay, let's move on. Oops. Okay. All right, so now we're going to move to the next one. Now the next one has our difference of cubes. And remember, we had that rule that said if I had a cubed minus b cubed, we would use, so I'm not going to put that. We would use two factors. We would use the same sign, the opposite sign, always positive. That's their SOAP. And then we would put one of each, squared of each, one of each. Okay, cool. So let's see how we would factor this one. Well, this guy is a cubed minus b cubed, right? And so what our a is x. And what our b is 3. So that 27 is 3 cubed. So we factor that into two factors. Same sign, opposite sign, always positive. And now we're going to do one of each, squared of each, one of each. Okay, so we have our two factors. And then we're going to go to the bottom. And the bottom is a simple polynomial because this is 1. So we just need to multiply to a negative 30 and add to a 7. So when we multiply to a negative 30 and we add to a 7, we have to think about that for a second, and you might come up with a positive 10 and a negative 3. So this guy's x plus 10, x minus 3. Well, this is nice because we have a common factor, and so we would be finished with x squared plus 3x plus 9 over x plus 10. Now remember, I said that if it's part of a sum, it has to be in every single term, right? Okay, now let's talk about multiplying. Okay, so to multiply, we are going to factor everything, and we're going to make ones with any top with any bottom, and then we're just going to find the product. So those are like our steps. So let's go ahead and factor first. The first one is simple, so we need two things that multiply to a negative 10 and add to a 3. Negative 10 and add to a 3. So we're going to get 5 and negative 2. So this is going to be x plus 5, x minus 2. And then the next one's simple, so we have to multiply to a 12 and add to a 4. So multiply to a 12 and add to a 4. Sorry, negative 12. So we'll have 6 and negative 2. So x plus 6 and x minus 2. Okay, and then our next one, we're going to factor out a 3, and we're going to have 3 times x plus 6. And the last thing is x plus 3. Okay, now when we make ones, we're going to be able to do it with any top, with any bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the top only first. Let's see if I can move this up. Oops. Okay. So when I look at the top, I'm going to first look at x plus 5. Do I have an x plus 5 on the bottom? No, I do not. Okay, so then I go to the next factor. Do I have an x minus 2 on any of the denominators? And the answer is yes. So our x minus 2 will make a 1. Do I have just a 3? No, I don't. This one has a 3, but it's a sum, so I'd have to have all of that, right? So I'd have to have all of that, but I don't. Okay, so now I'm asking myself, do I have an x plus 6? And I do. I have an x plus 6 right here, so this will go away. So then when we multiply, you guys, I'm okay with you just leaving it in factored form, but we have a 3 and an x plus 5 on the top, and we have an x plus 3 on the bottom, and we're done. So we factored, we made as many ones as we could, and then we found the product. We just put everything together. Okay, same idea, but maybe a little bit more factoring this time. So for our first one, we can factor out an x first. So this would be x times x squared minus 2x minus 35. And then we just needed to find two things that multiplied to a negative 35 and added to a negative 2. And so that would be negative 7 and a positive 5. So the top here would be x, and then x minus 7, x plus 5. On the bottom, we can't really factor it, so we leave it x minus 7. Notice how I'm putting parentheses around it? It's because the sum has to go together, right? Now let's look at this one simple. So we're going to, multiply to negative 7 and add to a 6. They're next door neighbors, so we'll do a 7 and a negative 1. So that's x plus 7, x minus 1. And then we have the last one on the bottom, which is just a factor of x. So that's x minus 1. And we can actually move this over a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to move this over here so that we have a little bit more room. Okay, so let's see if we have any. We're going to go through every factor on the top. Do we have an x on the top and the bottom? Yes. So those are going to make a 1. Do we have an x minus 7 on the top and the bottom? Yes. So those are going to make a 1. Do we have an x plus 5? And the answer is no. Do we have an x plus 7? Well, we do not. The only thing we have left on the bottom is an x minus 1. And there we do have 1 on the top. So notice how on the bottom there's absolutely nothing. So that's just 1. So we would take all the factors from the top, x plus 5, x plus 7, and then we would take the factors at the bottom, and if there's nothing left, there's a 1. But we can just rewrite this as x plus 5 times x plus 7, and we're fine. Now, if it's multiple choice, and that is actually multiplied out, you would have to know how to multiply that out, but I'm hoping by now you all know how to do that. So the cool thing about divide is it's all the steps from multiply. The only thing we have to do is we are going to change the fraction that follows the division sign to the reciprocal and turn it to multiplication. So here's the division sign. So that's the fraction that follows the division sign. So we're going to take x squared plus 3x minus 10, x squared minus 8x plus 15. And now we're turning it into multiplication, but we're going to be flipping these guys. So this guy's going to be x squared plus 3x minus 18 on the top. And then notice how my x is not first. Well, if I factor out a negative 1 right now, I would get a negative 4 plus x squared. So can you guys see how this is really negative 1 and then x squared minus 4? This is a little trick. Sometimes we have to do that, okay? Because we usually like to have the x's first, and it also helps us factor. Okay, so now we've done all of that. So now we're going to factor. So we look at the top, and we need two things that multiply to a negative 10 and add to a 3. So we're going to get 5 and negative 2. X plus 5, x minus 2. I told you guys factoring was never going to go away. Then we need to multiply to 15 and add to a 9, or an 8, negative 8. 15 multiply and then add to a negative 8. Well, two negatives make a positive with multiplication. And then when we add two negatives, we get that negative. So we're going to have x minus 5 and then x minus 3 times. And then we need two things that multiply to negative 18 and add to 3. Negative 18 to multiply and add to a positive 3. So we're going to have a negative and a positive again. And so we're going to have 9 and 2 is not going to work. No. 9 and 2 is not going to work. So another way to do that is 6 and 3. So we would have x minus 3 and x plus 6. Now on the bottom, we already factored this one once. We took the 1 out, but we have the difference of squares right here. So we will turn that into x plus 2, x minus 2, and we are ready to roll. So we're going to look at the top. The first one on the top is x plus 5, but there's not an x plus 5. There's an x minus 5, but we can't do anything about that. The next one we have is x minus 2, and we do have an x minus 2 on the bottom, so we can make a 1. Now, keep in mind, we cannot do this unless we have multiplication. So when we had division, we couldn't do this. We have to get the multiplication first. Okay, the next one is x minus 3, and we did have an x minus 3 on the bottom. And lastly, we have x plus 6, and we do not have an x plus 6 on the bottom. Now, when we have a negative 1, if I have 5 over negative 1, that's the same as negative 5 over 1. I can just take that negative and move it to the top. I'm going to do the same thing with this negative one just because it's a little bit easier to see that. And I have an x plus 5 left. I have an x plus 6 left. And then I have an x minus 5 left. And I have this guy I moved to the top. And then this is x plus 2. And I'm done. Okay, hopefully this helps you guys. Take care.